Hello, and welcome to the fourth video in a series about ClemsonNEXT, the strategic plan for land use for the City of Clemson. This video is about inclusivity, and this is something that is greatly impacted by not only growth, but also the affordability of your community. And currently, it's also very much a part of the national dialogue as plans that are trying to address this issue are underway in cities all across America. Inclusivity asks the question, who are we building this community for? And who are we excluding? And as you'll see in this video, the decline in home affordability in Clemson is disproportionately impacting people of color, low and moderate income households, and your essential workforce. What's important to understand is that these problems cannot be effectively addressed without changes in policy as it stands today.
In this video, we will define what exactly we mean by inclusivity, then share with you some facts about inclusivity in Clemson, particularly as it relates to housing affordability. Take a look at the future of housing inclusivity if things continue on the anticipated trajectory. Help you visualize what this means on an individual home or household level and how different types of development could impact inclusivity. After watching the video, make sure to take the survey so that we can understand your experience and your priorities as they relate to issues of inclusion.
So what is inclusivity? It's not really a word we hear every day. In short, it's about whether a community is open, welcoming, accessible to people with a broad range of backgrounds. Communities across the country are having conversations around this like they never have before, especially as it relates to equity and to racial equity. Equity involves acknowledging that many of the historical policies in our communities have not created the same opportunities for different groups of people. And so in this process, we're going to be using an equity lens, which means that as we think about land use and development, we're going to think about how policies impact some of the people who have historically been poorly served, underserved, and even disenfranchised. In the context of development in Clemson, housing is really at the core of this conversation. Is quality, affordable housing available in Clemson? For whom is it available? For whom isn't it available? And will it be in the future? Asking these questions can definitely be challenging, but they're also necessary for us all to understand if Clemson's policies today are in line with the values it has for its future. And if they aren't, this process is an opportunity to think about new tools, policies, and strategies that can bring those things better in alignment. One way to look at the issue is by comparing housing costs in Clemson to what the people living and working in Clemson can actually afford. And there are a lot of ways even to think about that, but roughly we'll define affordability as a household paying no more than 30% of its total income toward housing costs. But really the key thing in this conversation is that affordability number is really different for different people. Home prices in Clemson span a really wide spectrum, but the median sales price lands right around $250,000. And actually, new homes built in the last several years go for well over $400,000. To afford this home with a 10% down payment, a household would need to earn at least $60,000 per year and have the savings to quickly and competitively make the offer and then make the down payment. For many in Clemson, that's still fairly well in reach, but for many others, it isn't even close. For the median 25 to 34-year-old household, for nurses just starting out, for public school teachers, and for the average African-American household, attainable home ownership opportunities in Clemson are few and far between. This means that for these groups, if they'd like to buy a home in the area, will be limited to lower quality options that aren't move-in ready, will be forced to look outside of Clemson, where home prices are more attainable for them, or will rely on rental options for the foreseeable future. Home prices are also growing at a really rapid pace. Median sales prices have increased almost 40% in just 10 years. If this rate of price growth continues, median prices in Clemson will be $340,000 in 10 years. Another dimension of these rising land prices is the impact on neighborhoods like Cadillac Heights. The unmet demand for student housing all across Clemson expansion means that student housing developers are looking for more land where they can build that student housing and buying that land in areas where prices are lower. This is accelerating the displacement of community members in these historic African American neighborhoods. Since 2013, housing vacancy has actually increased 10% in this area, which indicates that longtime residents are moving out and that the community is slowly shrinking. So that's a quick picture of what has been happening, but what do we expect to happen in the future over the next 10 years? And how will housing needs change? It probably goes without saying that there's a lot of uncertainty about how the economy will change, how incomes will change, and therefore how housing needs will change, with the economic impacts of COVID-19 still unfolding. So we have to rely on some of our best guesses, which come from a state agency that's created some job projections for the region, including Clemson. Here are the occupations with the highest projected job growth, and here's what those jobs pay on a median basis. If we translate those wages to housing affordability, we can see that some jobs are just on the edge of the current median price in Clemson. And others, especially if it's a single income household, need options that are much more affordable than what's broadly available today in Clemson. Here's the picture of rental affordability against what is broadly available in terms of rental housing. Again, for many in Clemson, the existing options are out of reach. And that continued rapid growth in housing prices is going to edge a lot of people in the region who will be taking these new jobs out of the market. Again, pushing them to the edges of urban areas where housing is less expensive, contributing to more traffic, more sprawl, and more land development. So taken all together, these things suggest that Clemson is going to need a broad range of strategies to create, to preserve, to improve the quality of, and encourage quality, affordable housing in the community. And we're going to take a deep dive on what those options could be in the next phase. But before we get there, we want to look a little bit more at some of the dynamics impacting housing development in Clemson today. Like, with policies currently in place, what can be built? And who is that affordable to? And based on that, how does the Clemson community want to move forward? Matt is going to walk us through some of the answers to the analytical pieces of this question.
Development economics can help us answer some of these questions. We can start by looking at what it takes to build a single unit of housing. There are three main pieces of it: construction costs, soft costs, which include things like marketing, design, financing, and engineering, and land costs. Development is feasible only if all these costs come in under what a house can sell for, or what an apartment building can bring in rental income over time.
So different types of housing have different costs at varying densities, and this can have a profound impact on housing affordability. This is especially true in places like downtown Clemson and along key commercial corridors like College Avenue and Tiger Boulevard, where land is relatively expensive. And what's interesting is, when you're building housing, land cost for an acre is relatively constant. And so if you can build relatively more units per acre, you can spread the cost of that land amongst more people. And so that translates into lower home sale prices and lower rents than what you would otherwise see with a low density type of development like single family. So density is an important housing affordability tool. Now take a look at some of the densities currently allowed through Clemson's zoning code.
If housing at this density were built in a high-value area like downtown, here is what it would need to sell or rent for. And here is what a household in Clemson would have to earn in order to afford that price. At the lowest density, a household has to earn $180,000 annually, or more than 3 times what a household would have to earn to afford housing in a higher density development. So this is relatively affordable to a lot more people, but still not in reach for some of the groups we looked at before.
So as you just saw, low density housing on high value real estate, it has significant negative impacts on affordability and inclusivity. Staying open to other types of development will help Clemson maintain a more open and inclusive community.
And a great deal of vacant land in Clemson is zoned at these lower densities. A lot of this land isn't in as high value a location, but some of these same density considerations apply to those neighborhood-based situations as well.
Clemson has all sorts of options to consider. There are tools, policies, and strategies that can all improve access to housing affordability, and we're going to take a deep dive on those in the next phase. But before we do, we really need to hear more from you. What aspects of inclusivity are most important for you? What would you like to see happen next in the Clemson community as it pertains to housing and housing affordability? And once we've heard from you, we'll present some of the options that can help the community best achieve its goals. Please take a minute to complete the survey because we really look forward to hearing from you and to continuing this conversation.